Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody. It's a great sunny day here, and I am so excited because we're going to be talking about a book that is so timely. It's amazing. We're going to be talking about This is Consciousness, and I have the author, Regina Leffers, with me. This book was a bit about the book. It was written in response to the situation in which we currently are finding ourselves. People are not speaking civilly to each other at every level of society. Nothing works well when we aren't able to sit down together and talk through problems to find solutions. That problem might be able to be rectified if people were able to understand their own consciousness and how it functions. This information is basic to being human. We carry a toolbox around with inside of us of our own heads and hearts, and not only do we not know how to use the tools, but many of us don't even know that they exist. We think that the thoughts we have are simply true. What we need to understand is that our thoughts are representative of a specific facet of consciousness, and that as we move from one facet into another, our thoughts will change. And this book addresses that problem. We'll learn about each level of consciousness that we human beings grow into and through as we live our lives. Problems emerge for both the individual and society when we get stuck living in a facet of consciousness beyond its usefulness. Every human being needs to know this basic information about themselves. We're going to find practical information about what to do to help ourselves when we experience the pain of being stuck. And almost every one of us knows what it's like to be stuck. Regina is the retired director of the Center of Excellence for the Built Environment and professor of sustainable construction for the College of Engineering at Purdue University in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And she currently teaches classes on meditation and consciousness. She's an amazing lady. She has an amazing story. And her perception, her understanding of the different levels of consciousness will help you to understand the steps that we go through and help to explain how to move from one level to another. So welcome to the show, Regina. I'm so glad you're here today.
I am really glad to be here. Thank you, Barbara. Nice introduction, by the way.
Well, you gave me the material, so it was not hard to do for sure. It's the concept of consciousness. We talk about it frequently. And I hear people throwing consciousness around like, well, that's not within my consciousness or whatever. It's like your consciousness is only one place and one thing. And that's not true. As a spiritual individual, our consciousness is alive as we are, and it grows and it expands. And if we work with it, we become more powerful in understanding where our energy and our power comes from. So so writing this book, I mean, with the chaos that's going on in the world, seeing people that are locked into one place and aren't moving, not for anything. It's like their feet are in cement and their head has a bag over it. And if people understood that consciousness was a tool to work with, not something to just blame if something doesn't go right, is really, really important. So what drove you to write this book? I know that, you're certainly concerned, but what was it that sort of registered with you that said, it's time I wrote a book to explain this?
So I could answer that in a couple of different ways. I think the way I want to answer it is that I notice in our society, people, and really all over the world, people don't understand two basic things. One is that they have an operating system and they don't know it. And so they don't know how to use their own operating system to become the person they really want to. The other thing that I saw that people don't understand is that, especially on social media right now,
Yes.
the algorithms are actually funneling material to us that trying to get a tighter and tighter vice on what we think and what we see and what we read, and it'll be different for every person. And so they don't understand that their own thoughts are being shaped and controlled by something outside of them. And so for those two reasons, but really, Barbara, I see the infighting, the families being destroyed, not being able to talk to each other civilly, and not just disowning. People are being disowned because they have a different opinion, and they get married to their opinions.
Yes.
And it's important for us to know that those opinions come from a facet of consciousness in that area of life that we're living. They're representative of the facet that if we just expand to the next facet of consciousness, that opinion will change. It doesn't stay the same because it's representative of a facet of consciousness. So hoping the normal everyday person like you and me can read this book and understand themselves better, understand their own operating system, and go ahead and grow.
Well, I think one of the important things too is that that we know what we feel and what we know, but the reality is that if we're not happy with the society we've surrounded ourselves with, we can change it. It's not. It's you can't blame other people for where you are.
True.
You can, and that's I think what really is the important thing, that one of the most important things that I got from your book. It was over and over and over the fact that if this isn't a happy place for you, then you make a happy place, you find a happy place, you create a happy place. You don't have to wallow in it, change it. And that also doesn't mean if you're not happy with your job that you leave your job. I never suggest anybody leave gainful employment, but you can change the environment in which your job is hitting you, addressing you. There's so many ways to alter situations so that it's a happier time and place for you. And I know that it's just when I look at the news, when I look at people out, shopping, and it's people seem to be clamming up more and more and more as times get stressful. And the reality is, if they expanded themselves more and more and more, the environment would be a happier place to live in.
It would. Yeah.
It's so, you know what it is? It's so easy, people won't do it.
Well, I'm hoping they will.
Oh yeah, I am too. Your book, I mean, the one of the parts that I fell in love with was you call consciousness having different facets as opposed to different levels, so because so many people, I've heard people say, well, you're at a lower level of consciousness than I am, and therefore you won't understand. That just, it upsets me. But instead of calling it a level, you call it a facet. How did that come about? Because it's brilliant.
It is brilliant, isn't it? So I had a group when I wrote the first book on consciousness that I've written. I had a group that met with me every week, and we went through the material that I was writing. But one of the things that we focused on first was what is consciousness like in reality? Because all of the consciousness models that have been written are hierarchical. It's like
Yes.
you're climbing a ladder. And so from that perspective, someone is lower and somebody else is higher in consciousness. But what we realized is that that's not it at all. We are more like a rubber band. And if we think of it that way, we expand in consciousness. And we expand to include more of what exists into what we claim as us. So in moving from the very most basic, survive, to all the way to the most expanded that a human being has been clocked at in terms of consciousness, the ninth facet of consciousness, which I call be creation.
Yeah.
Okay? As we move, we include the person at the ninth facet of consciousness includes everything in existence as part of their own definition of who they are. They're connected to everything.
Mm-hmm.
So as we move through the facets of consciousness, for example, you have cats, I see.
Yes.
Yeah, and as we move, we might care about just our pets, okay? That would be a smaller facet of consciousness. But as we expand, we may start to care about more, maybe all of the animals of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
That would be most expanded, all biology of the earth. From our own, just caring about our own backyards, to the environment. So that's how we expand to include more. Make sense?
Yeah. And, when I was reading about this, I kept visualizing a gemstone because I'm crazy about gemstones. And how if a gemstone has just been rounded and there's really no facets to it, it's all is one, and that's it. But as soon as you start to facet it, it becomes more and more and more brilliant. Adding a facet for this and a facet for that, and the greater degree of facets that you create, the more brilliant the essence of who you are becomes.
That is a wonderful way to say it, Barbara. Yes. As we expand in consciousness, we move into and through different facets of consciousness. We our light shines. People, and people feel that, can feel that.
I know that every now and then I catch myself if I'm talking to someone and think, it will flash through, wait a minute, this is a level of consciousness that's not getting through. I need to change to a different facet of consciousness to connect. And it works like crazy if you become aware that where you're coming from isn't hitting what you want to hit. You have to go to another level. You can't expect the other person to. You adjust, and it's not coming up or down. It's over.
Right. Right. That's a really good way to say it. And it's a way to help us, you described, communicating with someone more clearly, being able to really speak heart to heart. And we can do that if we're aware of the other facets of consciousness and see where someone is. And here's what I feel. When I move to a different facet of consciousness to be able to connect with someone, I feel like my heart blooms compassion.
Yeah.
And it opens, and it makes it a lot easier to communicate.
Yesterday I was mailing a needlepoint to a friend of mine and I was at UPS, and a lovely man was ahead of me, and he stepped aside so I could go. And I thanked him, and he just stood there and wasn't talking to him or anything. And at one point, the person behind the counter said to me, "And what's the value of this?" And I got stumped, because any value I would put on it would not be realistic. And so I was just there, and behind me I heard the man say, "It's priceless. She made it herself." And I turned around, and suddenly there was a bridge. And I said, "Oh, you must know some needle pointers." And he said, "I know some crafty people, and you're sure one of them." And suddenly there was a bridge to talk about. And it was really quite interesting, because where I was coming from initially was not where he was coming from. And yet I liked where he was coming from a lot better. So I went there. But you have to be, you have to be adaptable. You have to be aware of where you're coming from. Everybody, I think, has an automatic level that they deal with. And I know for a long time, I would say to people, I blend well, but I'm more comfortable in a metaphysical, spiritual environment than I am in an intellectual, scientific environment, because that's not my norm. My norm is, let's talk spirit, and let's talk magic, and let's talk all of the wonderful stuff there. And to have to, move to another level, to be aware that you're moving is really important. And the fact that you have so many different levels. I mean, anybody who's ever worked with animals or young children know that they go to a level of consciousness that the child can relate to. So why aren't we doing it with, other people around us? Why are we just leaving that tool to the side and going our way and staying on one track when we have so many open to us?
Good question.
Well, I look at the politicians today, and I'm not going into politics, but I am going to say that there are so many people that are so stuck in their ways that they lack the pleasure of having the ability to be creative and solve problems in a unique and creative way. And that's where I see the downfall even of our country. At some point in time, if people don't learn to share and to work together, then we have a problem. And I think your story, among other things, I know you've been a lifetime meditator.
I have.
But you have an amazing story as far as realizing that you did not produce alpha waves.
Right.
You want to share that with us, because that is such a cool story.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I started meditating when I was 30 because I had a lot of energy and I didn't know how to manage it myself. And I noticed that meditation really helped me do that. So I began meditating every day. Some days it was 5 minutes. Some days it was 20 minutes. Most days it was at least an hour for now 46 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But one of the things that I noticed when I really had to work hard to forgive an extreme example of violence with my father. And I worked on that in journaling, in therapy, and in meditation my entire adult life. Excuse me. And I found that I would reach a certain kind of forgiveness, but it wouldn't stick. And finally, in my 60s, early 60s, I thought to myself, what in the heck is going on?
Yeah.
I wonder why I can't forgive in a way that makes it stick. And I was at Barnes and Noble, and here's the cue into your magic. A book actually jumped off the shelf in front of me.
It does happen.
It happened to me, and that book is called the Code of the Extraordinary Mind. Very good. I bought it and read it, and in it, Vishen Lakhani, the author, talked about his experience at a place called 40 Years of Zen. And what he talked about was that they specialized in helping people forgive and feel grateful. And I thought, whoa, this is exactly what I need. So I did some investigation and booked myself for a week and flew out to Seattle and spent the week with a neuroscientist and a staff of other people. They did a mind map, a brain map, on the first day, an EEG, and measured my brain waves, and also took a look at what my brain looked like. What they discovered that I had never known about is that I had an injury to the right prefrontal cortex that had fingers extending into all parts of my brain. And with that injury, they expected me to present with no short-term memory, no ability to focus, and of course, there was no alpha brainwave present in my brain. My brain produced the other brainwaves, and beta and theta, and of course delta, our sleeping brainwave. And then another brainwave was dominant in me, gamma. Okay, so evidently my meditation practice helped my brain to do workarounds, because during the time I was supposed to have no ability to focus and no short-term memory, I earned my doctorate in philosophy, which is,
impressive.
It was, for somebody who had a brain injury that with that diagnosis. So they set up a computer program for me, and I worked with it every morning for a half hour. On the program, on the screen, was an image of my brain and the injury, which was all shown in red. The injury and all the fingers were shown in red. And my instruction, and I was again hooked up to an EEG. My instruction was to just observe the screen, that my brain would do the work. And what my brain was to do, if it turned any area of red to green, it would receive a moment of sublime music, which I could hear.
Yeah.
Okay. And through the week, I observed my brain turning more and more of that red space to green throughout the week. They kept making it more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a bell curve. It just, my brain healed itself and I got to watch it.
That's
Okay.
amazing.
Then for the really the proof in the pudding, right? So the proof was that every morning after that session, I went into an isolation pod to meditate for an hour and a half, 2 hours, morning and afternoon.
Wow.
Yes. And during that time, I was hooked up to biofeedback equipment, which would tell me if my brain was in alpha, producing alpha brainwaves. Okay. The first time, there was nothing. And after the session, the very first session on that first morning, I went out and I was able to see that, yes, there were all the other brainwaves were present, but no alpha.
Mm-hmm.
I was there for that week with 3 other people, and their computer screens were shown. Okay. And I saw that they all produced alpha. So in the afternoon, I'm back in, and my brain actually produced a little alpha. By the end of the week, it was producing alpha strong. It was bright, and it was very present. So alpha brainwave, this is what I learned while I was there, Barbara, that when we produce alpha brainwaves, that's the only place that actual forgiveness and gratitude can be felt in the body. So if you ever feel, for example, real grateful for something, and it's like your heart lights up with gratitude, you can know that your brain is producing alpha brainwaves. And if you ever really need to forgive someone, you need to take your brain into alpha. And I can explain how to do that really easily. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ways to do it, and I also tell this to people who say, oh no, I can't meditate. Here's the truth. Everybody can. Everybody. Yeah. Because all we have to do is feel grateful. Bring somebody, a person, place, thing, space, anything to mind that, excuse me, that we're really grateful for. And what happens is that blooms, that gratitude blooms. We're producing alpha brainwaves. And all we have to do is continue feeling grateful to meditate, because alpha is a very creative meditative state.
Absolutely.
Then to forgive someone, move from the gratitude right into forgiveness of the the instance, whatever it was that you need to forgive, and it will happen.
I have found that right when you wake up, before you're really totally all there, that's a wonderful time for alpha. And
Yes.
I find that for me, that's when I try to put myself into the creative mode and, where are we going today? What are we going to do? What are we going to express and stuff like that? I think working with brainwaves, working with understanding the different frequencies that we have access to helps us to, in many ways, become um, far more productive on a creative level. And the one thing I tell most people that when they say my life is stuck, I don't know what to do. I always recommend meditation, but the next thing I recommend is do something creative. And I don't care what it is. If you get joy from the creative process, you're doing it right. And it is the creative process that fuels our spiritual journey. So, and the fact that you were so creative in spite of the fact that you didn't have the alpha is really phenomenal.
It
But
is.
there is a difference in the quality or I don't know, quality isn't the right word, frequency. There's a difference in the frequency that is utilized. The creative frequency is different if someone is connected to the alpha within them, I have found.
That's absolutely true. Yes. And the more we can help our brains produce alpha brainwaves, the more creative solutions we'll come up with.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what, too, helps one to go from one facet of consciousness to another. First of all, recognizing possibly that you're stuck in one. And I think the most frustrating thing for me is to be able to realize somebody's stuck and they won't listen to the fact that they're stuck and they can move. So stuckedness is something we have to recognize within ourselves.
It is. It is.
I think there have been a number of times in my life where I was stuck in a place, and I would get angry at everybody because nothing was changing, and then I realized that it was mine to change. And then once you take control and responsibility and know that it's not going to necessarily happen overnight, but it will happen, working on it. And like you said, just a little meditation a day is all you need. I mean, you begin to enjoy it, so you extend it, but all you need is a little bit to sort of get it started. It's sort of like an engine. Lots of times when you pull on an engine, it'll cough a little bit and then it won't go. But the more you pull, the more frequently the cough gets until it finally roars into, saying, "All right, I'll go." So I think that's how we are. Um, and being human is why we're here, so that there's a lesson connected to the fact that, like you said, like something I read, you have a tool belt, but you don't know you have it. And that's I think one of the biggest things that I try to talk to people about, because you have all these tools, you have all these capabilities, you have all these wonderful faculties within you that you can have access to. And the way you get there is through meditation, it's through creativity. And so what do you tell? How do you say to someone, all right, you're stuck. Here's how you get unstuck.
Well, one of the things that I did in This is Consciousness is I wrote about the shadow of each facet,
Mm-hmm.
so that hopefully, and described what stuck might feel and look like
Yeah.
in each facet of consciousness. And so hoping that people will be able to identify where they are, and identify how the place that they're stuck in. Um, lots of there's lots of fear mongering going on,
Yes.
and moving that into people, and so lots of people are stuck in, especially, well, you'll recognize in the first facet of consciousness, the very smallest, least expansive facet of consciousness, the shadow is the thinking that there's not enough to go around. Okay, and so if this, um, migrant worker has a job, that means that I don't have a job. I can't get a job.
Uh-huh.
So that's rampant in our culture right now, that
It is. Yeah.
idea. And that's a place that we can recognize that we're stuck, okay, in the shadow of the very first facet. In belong, the second facet of consciousness, would you like me to go through the shadow in each?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, in belong, the second facet of consciousness, we do learn to belong to our family, um, whoever that is.
Yeah.
We learn to belong, but we also learn who doesn't belong. Okay, so it's only the second facet of consciousness, and you can see the shadow, is happening in our country right now, and a lot of people thinking that, um, that some of us belong and some of us don't. Okay, so then the third facet of consciousness is called, individuate, and we go through that when we're teenagers primarily, but we individuate all our lives from things that we've allowed to define and control us. Okay. But in the work of individuation, we do from our parents mostly, or the people who have raised us. And the shadow of individuate is, is a little harder to describe.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm trying to think of how it's evident in our culture right now. Um, the shadow of individuate is actually when we recognize that we ought to individuate from someone or something, and we don't do it because of fear. Okay, so we stay stuck and literally controlled by whatever it is that we need to individuate from. And that is also happening right now a lot in our culture. Fourth facet of consciousness, I call comply, but it's and that sounds like kind of a weird word, a weird way to describe it, but because we're so excited to learn the rules of our culture when we're young, we want to be older than we are, right?
Yes.
Teenagers, we want to look like we're in our 20s or whatever. And comply is where we learn all the rules of our culture and society. And then the shadow of comply, and we take them on. We're happy to do that. At some point, we might look at a rule and realize that that rule does not apply to us. Anybody who is gay will be faced right away with the cultural, quote, rule to get married and have a family and so on.
Yeah.
Okay. And they will either move into the next facet of consciousness or get stuck in the shadow of comply by doing exactly what is against their own being.
Yeah.
and we've all known unhappy couples who have done that.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, but that's an example where a rule does not apply to us, but we stay stuck in it anyway, out of fear of losing respect or whatever, our, church friends, whatever it is. Then to risk and re-individuate is the fifth facet of consciousness. And if we've moved into this facet, it's because we, in one area of life, have realized that one of the rules of comply either does or does not apply to us. So it's really the risk and re-individuate is the beginning of where we become introspective about who we are, really, who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So risk and re-individuate is a sign that we have become introspective, that we've reviewed, values and societal rules and decided for ourselves what applies to us and what does not. The shadow of risk and re-individuate is unusual, but we've all known people who do this. So it's when we find that something is not right for us. For example, I'm just going to pull this example out. Somebody who leaves a church because, excuse me, the church is not right for them.
Mm-hmm.
But they look back at the people, excuse me, who are still in that church and think it shouldn't be right for them either.
Oh. Dry air.
It is so dry here.
Yeah, I have choked my way through many a show.
So then the sixth facet of consciousness is care and empathy. And care and empathy is where we really care about so much more of the world. Thank you. And it is where all of our social programs are born from. All of the net that catches us. So any social worker is working from this facet of consciousness. Counselors, people who are service, are generally living from care and empathy. The shadow of care and empathy that I've noticed, and this is another reason I really want people to read this book, is because I notice that people who care so much are still throwing stones instead of expanding their consciousness. And, probably most of my friends live in care and empathy. And if they're busy throwing stones, having bad thoughts about politics or society,
Yes.
or people who voted the other way or whatever, they're stuck in the shadow of care and empathy. And I want them to realize it and move themselves along into the next facet of consciousness.
That's a tough one.
It is, but to do it, we have to do something All of the other ones we can expand into almost as a natural way of growing. But to grow from 6 to expand into 7, it takes something different.
Oh, I would say so.
Yeah, in 6, actually, from 1 to 6, our minds are mostly functioning from the beta brainwave.
Mm-hmm.
In 7, our minds are mostly functioning from the alpha brainwave. So we have to do something. And to cross that bridge into 7, there are some really easy ways to do it, because what's available to us now is amazing. If we put earbuds in and call up on our iPhones, if we call up just alpha brainwave music, we can listen to alpha brainwave music, and it will itself move our brains into alpha. We can work from that.
Oh, yeah.
And
there's I have to say, you've made an excellent point here, because the alpha brainwave, the alpha frequency, is something that is very available out there on CDs. It's available everywhere. It's comparable to the solfeggio music. Is there a connection there?
I don't know.
Solfeggio deals with frequencies, and it deals with healing energy, and I would suspect that it is very similar, because there are frequencies you can listen to for healing, for learning, for compassion. There's 7 different ones. So, but as far as just go for the alpha, and because I've used. It's not unusual, the fact that both of us are having trouble with our voices, because sometimes when the information you have to put out there is so good, there are energies that don't want it to get out there. So that it's kind of like being prevented from sharing something that is so very, very special. But if you have those earbuds, if you're listening to alpha frequencies, being creative with that kind of background music, you don't blare it, but it's subtle. It's there, but it's not there. And you'll find that the work you do is special. It's got another flavor to it. It has magic to it. And it takes you to a place inside of yourself that's always been there. You just didn't know how to get through that portal.
So true. I have a friend who's an accountant, Barbara, and she listens to alpha brainwave music while she works. Makes things so much easier.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I know that I used to, many years ago, I painted personal mandalas, and I would always have the alpha music playing as I painted, as I did the write-up for the reading. And my mother asked me once, and I said, it puts me in another place so that I can have a better quality of perception that I'm giving to people. And at the time, I didn't realize what was happening. It took 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years maybe, for me to understand that what I was doing was putting myself in alpha, so I could let go of a lot of the mundane stuff from the here and the now, and going to another level of information that people could utilize and share. So, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. And taking you into that seventh level. I mean, not everybody will live constantly in the seventh level of, or not level, but the seventh frequency of awareness. That's
Right.
expecting a lot, but
Well,
getting there.
but there's a lot of people who could go over that bridge.
Yes.
And it's just a decision. The other thing is that's before, in the sixth facet of consciousness, we become intellectually aware that everything is connected. So we know that, but it's an intellectual knowing. In the seventh facet of consciousness, um, which I call being authentic,
Mm-hmm.
is it's not just an intellectual understanding. We actually live that knowledge that everything is connected. So it's much more the way we live.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a worthwhile place to get to.
Absolutely. And I taught school for 25 years, so I'm a retired teacher. But the more I look at education today, the more I cringe, because there are several things that should be included from grade school on. I taught special ed. I had frequency music playing in my classroom because it calmed the kids and it enabled them to focus and probably grasp a whole lot more. And we are prevented from, we're intellectually cramming things into people's heads when we could also be spiritually opening them up to a consciousness that they may have to spend decades before they're aware it exists. I had my class meditating every day, 5 minutes, that's all. But it was a quiet time. It was a time where they just sort of floated and drifted, and then we got on with what we were doing. They stopped me because it wasn't endorsed by
Oh,
the school system. So I don't understand why meditation isn't a possibility for kids to take if they want.
should be included. So,
Absolutely.
so should this information. It should be taught to children so they learn how to use their own operating systems. Yeah.
So everyone, I think it would be fun for people to actually experience the different levels and understand where they stood, and not levels, facets. I still like the idea of facets, because the more facets you put into a gemstone, the greater the brilliance it can reflect back and out. And that's what you're doing here. You're giving people a handbook on understanding how to radiate greater light from within.
It's the truth. Absolutely. Yes.
And you're coming more from the philosophical and everything, but I always get the metaphysical in one way or another. But you can actually sit back and watch it on TV and figure out what facet people are coming from.
And it's a good exercise to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And even just the whole show, where the show is aiming. It would be excellent if people could take a look at our leaders.
Well, and become more discerning. I mean, the more discerning you become, first for yourself and then of course other people, but judging other people is not a good idea, but we do it anyhow. But it's being aware of the different levels within ourself, levels, facets, and then being able to see the different facets at work within other people, and understanding where they're coming from, and that makes you more compassionate, and it gives you a better idea of how would I communicate with this person from that facet within myself to sort of get my point across better.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, I look at it as a spiritual growth thing, but it can also be looked at as a better business approach to whatever you're doing, whether you're selling a car, a philosophy, or a church service.
Anything. So the accountant friend that I have owns a business, and she works with, she specializes in nonprofits, and she was really really just confused. She had to speak to boards of directors and work with them of each nonprofit.
Yeah.
And she had to speak with and work with the executive directors. And when she read This Is Consciousness, she realized what she has to do. The boards of directors are there to enforce rules. So they are living from comply,
Yes.
from that facet of consciousness. And the executive directors are there to provide a service. They're living from the sixth facet of consciousness, care and empathy. And she just had to adjust. All she has to do is adjust the way she speaks with people. And it has made all the difference in her work.
Oh, it does.
So yes, it applies to everything.
I just, there have been times that I've lectured and been in a classroom situation and understood that what was expected of me was not necessarily what was going on. And so it was a matter of, okay, I will give the teacher what she requires me to give the people, but then I'll slip in the other stuff too, just in case there's somebody up there that's paying attention. And it's always been a lot of fun because I have found that because I love what I do, my enthusiasm for what I talk about is so much different than the cut and dry that the teacher wanted, the explanation to be. But then when I got to the magic and how it can be used, I was so enthusiastic that that's what people remember. So I learned from that. I served in the pulpit for 5 years in a non-denominational church. And the very first time I stood in the pulpit, I gave a chapter and verse. I put the organist to sleep. I put the congregation to sleep. I probably took a nap myself. And I realized not only how boring it was, but it didn't teach anybody anything. And so the next time, I was surprised they asked me back. The next time I said, look, I'm not worthy of this, of giving you a sermon. Let me tell you about how I made a mistake. And so you won't have to make the same mistake. And I always got them laughing. And once I got them laughing, I knew the message had gotten across. So it was a matter of, I went to that facet within each of them where they were relaxed and happy and joyful. And that meant they paid attention to what I was saying. So, happily I don't have to do that anymore. But I had such a great time with it. I had fun with it. As soon as I had fun, they had fun, and I was able to teach. And I think that's something that every teacher needs to understand as well. It's not, I have this syllabus that I have to fulfill, and I have to teach it to everybody, and then I get my paycheck. But that's not the point of educating. And teaching is no longer what it used to be.
Well, except this is lovely. This teaching experience is really lovely.
This is what I was meant to do. I mean, it's like, let me have fun with this. Let me help people see what the potential is out there. Let me bring people onto the show so that they can share their wisdom and their techniques and their magic. And you're right. But I do, you do currently teach classes in meditation. Do you do that online?
I actually do it um, here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, every Monday, 12:15 to 1, at a downtown church. And I was invited to use their chapel. And it's a beautiful place to meditate. So a bunch of people come every week and we meditate. I do have available on my website, Barbara, a meditation that people can download for themselves if it's just free. So they can go and get one there if they need it or would like it.
And your website is what?
reginaleffers.com.
Oh, intelligently put together, just like my website. They made it my name so I wouldn't forget it. I think that I highly recommend people find this book and read it and share it. I think that this is one of those books that book clubs should have, so that you could sit and talk and, what facet are you normally on? What facet do you, and not to diagnose anybody, but to share.
To share. That's it. Yeah, I love that idea. I hope book clubs pick it up. Yes.
It's I think that there's so much out there that is so computerized that we are drifting away from the human element of sharing and being a member of a group. It saddens me. I mean, stuff like this is great, is wonderful, but getting a small group of people together so that they can talk about things and share advice and share concerns. We're drifting away from people touching people into electronics, and it concerns me. And AI concerns me, scares me, as a matter of fact. But so long as we still have people that we can talk to, we can share with, and like you've explained so much about your book, I hope people really do get it and pay attention to the different facets and consider them a jewel of the universe, and that their purpose and their cause is to radiate love through their facets.
Thank you, Barbara. I love that. That's a great description. Thank you.
Well, I noticed our time is up, and I do want to thank you so much. Thank you for being adaptable about my stupid schedule. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story and your light with everybody. I so appreciate your being here.
And I appreciate being asked. Thank you, Barbara.
Take care and have a great day now. And everybody else too, get the book. It's well worth it. Bye-bye now.